unfenced playground, if you will. Anything can come on, anything can go. Standard American diet, not a whole lot of restrictions. I do what I want, I eat what I want. I just love the idea that it makes us have to be so thoughtful about, do we want to venture around the boundaries or do we want to stay in them? And often going around the boundaries takes time. Hi, welcome back to the Kilby Life. I want to share with you something that I have been thinking about for weeks. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to Element for sponsoring this video. Now, if you've been around here for any amount of time, you know that Element is one of those products we love. They are a tasty electrolyte drink with all of the good stuff that you want and none of the junk. They are fantastic for any way of eating, whether you're doing carnivore, a ketovore, paleo, any type of diet. They are fantastic and will support that diet and support your body through it. They come in these little packets. Let me actually get one out. These little packets that you can mix into your drink. This is the chocolate medley that they have out right now. They have raspberry chocolate, mint chocolate, and chai chocolate. And each of those little packets has 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. I like to use these ones hot during the winter. Just mix them in with like a mug of hot water and they are so good. And then raspberry and watermelon are my two favorite flavors to drink cold during the summer when I need to rehydrate my body and get that little extra boost. They're also fantastic for me as a mom on days that I feel like I'm dragging. I feel like they give me enough of a boost and make sure my electrolytes are good for the day so I can keep up with my kids. If you order using the link below, it's drinkelement.com/Kilby, drinklmnt.com/Kilby. They will send you one of these free sample packs. It's got 8 different flavors in it, so you can try a variety of flavors before you commit to one of these bigger boxes of anything you like, but really, you can't go wrong. Give those a try, let us know what you think. I was with my family the other day, driving down the road, and we passed a playground, and I thought, oh my goodness, that looks like such a fun playground, and my kids would really enjoy going there. And then as I'm kind of looking around and paying attention, I noticed that there's a fence around it. I thought, okay, well, bummer. It's probably a private playground of some sort at a church or a school, but for some reason they want to keep people off of it. And as I continued to look at this playground, I realized that the fence only had 2 sides. And I thought, that's really weird.
Diddly ho, neighbor.
And my brain has not been able to let go the fact that this playground had 2 sides for multiple weeks. So as I'm sitting there thinking about it, it's like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not gonna stop anybody. It's not gonna make it so people can't get on the playground. Like, what is even the point? As I'm looking and thinking and kind of replaying this in my brain, I thought, well, you know, the 2 fence sides line up with these 2 roads. And so maybe the fence is there to stop like big things, like to stop cars from driving onto the playground. Like if somebody goes out of control, the fence will stop the car. It won't go far enough onto the playground to hurt anybody. The second reason I thought about was maybe it's just there to slow people down. So in order to get on this playground, yeah, you can still have access, but from these busy roads, from the public point of view, you would have to either climb the fence, which will take a moment, or walk around the edges to get into the playground. But either way, it's gonna take you longer than if you were just to plow right through. It'll give everybody kind of on the playground a chance to be like, oh, somebody's coming. And then my final thought was it kind of limits the entry and access points. And I don't know about you, but as a mom watching my kids on a playground, the fewer places that I have to watch for them to like run off, the better. So it's like, okay, I can give you a 2-sided fence. That makes sense. And then of course, because also how my brain works, I started thinking about how the 2-sided fence reminds me so much of how I am choosing to set up how I'm eating these days and the way that I'm eating. I think for most people, their diet is kind of like a unfenced playground, if you will. Anything can come on, anything can go. Standard American diet, not a whole lot of restrictions. I do what I want, I eat what I want, whatever.
Yes, I will have fries with that.
And of course, you can go to the other extreme of that, where you have a fenced-in playground where it's nobody gets in, nobody gets out, and it's just the boundaries are very, very tight and enforced, and there's a lot of rules there.
Nothing for you.
Somewhere in the middle is kind of where I land. And I think the two-sided fence gives me a lot of great parallels to how I'm choosing to eat these days and the ways that I'm choosing to support my body and make sure it has the adequate nutrition it needs without feeling so penned in that I want to fight back, or so loose that anything goes and I don't have any real standards. So going back to my example of the playground, the first thing was to stop carbs. And to parallel that with a diet or the way of eating, it's going to stop hard nose. So I am not going to go binge eat a food because I've chosen not to do that because it doesn't support my body. It doesn't make me feel good. I'm not going to binge eat whatever it may be. There's also things that are like hard nose that I am going to stay away from because those boundaries are in place. So maybe those are carbs, maybe those are sugars, maybe it's a specific food item that I am always going to choose to say no to because I know it's not going to make me feel good. It's not going to support my body. So that boundary that's there to stop the cars from plowing onto the playground and ruining everything, those are the things that are going to be hard-nosed for me. That boundary is there just as a reminder, we're not doing that. The other thought, again, is that the boundary is there to slow people down, right? So when we start a new way of eating, a lot of times we'll evaluate, why are we doing it? What are we trying to solve? And we take some time to think about what boundaries we even need to have in place. Where do they need to lie? What do we need to address? What are we trying to attain by putting up this fence? Right? And so if it's to stop or slow down certain things from coming into our lives, two-sided fence will do that. And depending on where we're at in that journey and our way of eating, maybe there's some wiggle room on the edges. Maybe there's not. But it will help us to slow down and to pre-plan and to make decisions that are going to support our way of eating. So by generally saying, I'm not going to eat carbs, I'm not going to eat sugars.
I don't eat carbs.
Then when something comes along and I want to eat something that is off plan, I can stop and say, okay, well, generally I'm characterized by having this boundary and I'm characterized by eating a certain way. Do I want to change that for this specific item? And sometimes, yes, I'm going to take the long way around the fence and it's fine. And other times say, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth the way I'm going to feel. It's not worth the guilt that might come from it. It's not worth the side effects of it. Like for my kids, I don't buy bread anymore. We use sourdough bread. But if I don't pre-plan to make sure that I have bread, we don't have any. And I am not going to substitute sourdough bread with store-bought bread. So I'm not going to run to the store because I didn't plan ahead. So sometimes those boundaries force us to plan ahead in a way that if we don't, then we just don't have whatever that item is. I just love the idea that it makes us have to be so thoughtful about, do we want to venture around the boundaries or do we want to stay in them? And often going around the boundaries takes time and it's a commitment of some sort. Do we want to do that? Or are we going to climb over the fence, which also requires a lot of work sometimes? I don't know. I haven't climbed a fence in a long time, but I can't imagine it would be pretty or quick. So sometimes those boundaries are there just to slow us down and to really make us think about, do we want to go around them or not? Just like, do we want to go around it to get onto the park, or is it not really worth it? Again, my last thought is it gives us stricter entry and exit points. So maybe our two-sided fence also has a timeline on it where we're going to do this for 30 days or we're going to do this for a certain reason. But it gives us kind of a starting point or an ending point or something that doesn't make us feel penned in, but kind of gives us a little bit of freedom to choose and continue to evaluate. I think that can be really helpful and really beneficial. It also, again, before we start a way of eating and before we finish a way of eating, before we go back to or choose something different, it gives us thought processes to start going through of, do I need to change where my boundaries are? But it makes us stop and think about them because our entry and exit points are just a little bit more limited. And this would also work for challenges or seasons where we need to have stricter guidelines, stricter rules for ourselves. And I think about like Christmas time for me. You know, generally I don't need to have really strict guidelines in place. I know kind of what I'm going to eat, what I'm not going to eat, what that's going to look like, even quantities. Like I have a good idea of what keeps my body healthy and strong. But if you enter a time when there's going to be a lot more temptation or a lot of opportunity to get out of that easier, to get around it, having those boundaries up and even maybe tightening them up a little bit or defining them better will help stay on track. Now, for some people, for a season, you really do need a 4-sided fence. You know, if you've gotten to the point where like, I've done carnivore for a while, but or I've done a ketovore, but I'm not seeing the full results that I want, or I've kind of hit a plateau in weight loss and I want to get over that cliff. Sometimes we need those super tight boundaries.
All right, day 71 check-in. Yeah. Should I slap my belly again?
And they're there for a reason, and they're good for a season for most people. What I found for myself, and it may just because I'm immature, if you have kids, if you think about putting them in a crib or a pack and play or even a room with like a baby gate.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
If you're in that room and the gate's open and you're playing, they're fine. But the minute you shut that gate, they want out. Like, that is my experience with every one of my children. They're fine as long as the door is open. As soon as you shut the door, they're done. They want out of that room and they want out now. And I feel like that's how I am sometimes when I put too strict of boundaries on myself, or I don't give myself any room to reevaluate or any outs, if you will, where I feel like I put so many limitations on, all I want to do is fight back. If you have that kind of personality or that mindset, having the 2-sided fence model might give you a higher chance of success because you won't feel penned in the same way. Now, that's not to say you couldn't have the same boundaries as you do in a stricter model, but if you're not looking at it like you're penned in so much, it might be easier to stay on track with that. Again, I could just be the immature one here, but as soon as you tell me I can't do something, just like when I tell my children, you can't leave this room, immediately, that is what I want to do.
Stupid is, stupid does, sir.
So again, having the option of going outside of those boundaries, if I want to, if I think about it, if it's not a hard no, gives me enough freedom to almost want to stay in the boundary more, if that makes sense. Again, just like going back to my kids, as long as the door is open, they're usually very content staying wherever I put them with toys. But as soon as that door shuts, that's all they want.
Fiber, fiber, fiber.
It was just an interesting thought to me, and hopefully that makes sense to you. This playground has literally been on my mind for weeks and trying to figure out why they built it that way. And again, it just made so much sense with my brain as far as how I eat to use kind of that 2-sided fence model to set up the guidelines and boundaries that I want to put on myself to do this successfully and to do this long term. Hopefully that helps you guys a little bit. Hopefully that makes sense and you can evaluate your boundaries and look at things based on some of those big roadblocks that we come up against. How do we keep our hard nose? What does it look like if we have to go around or go over the boundaries? And then what happens when we have limited on and off ramps for the way we're eating? But giving ourselves the opportunity to reevaluate and to rethink our choices. I hope that helps you. I will talk to you guys very soon. Goodbye.